Sega Fes is a pretty big deal in Japan. If you might remember last year, we did a live coverage event of Sega Fes 2018 with Joe from GameSack, stupid Joe, and we got lots of cool information at this event. We were introduced to the Sega Genesis Mini, which of course was being worked on by AT Games, and thankfully Sega got rid of that partnership. We also learned about Shenmue 1 and 2 HD at this event, so I was very curious to see what the first presentation from Sega Fes 2019 would bring us. The presentation just wrapped up and we got some pretty cool information. Not quite as good as last year's event, but there's definitely some cool stuff worth talking about, and plus the event itself isn't over, so we'll be doing more subsequent videos on future announcements from Sega Fes 2019. So what was the initial presentation about? What did they showcase, and why should you be excited for some of these announcements? That's what we're going to talk about, so sit back, relax, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and let's talk about Sega Fes 2019 and what we've learned so far.
Hey, RGT 85. Hey, Sean.
Oh my God, it's Stevie Richards! So one of the big announcements that we got from Sega Fes 2019 was the confirmation of a new Sakura Wars game that will be coming to the PlayStation 4. Now, I'll be honest with you guys, I don't know shit about the Sakura Wars series. I don't own any of the games, I don't think I've played any of the games. I do know that it is somewhat popular in Japan, but a lot of these games don't end up getting translated and released in the West. It seems like a purely Japanese franchise, but I do know that some of the games have been pretty successful in terms of sales. One of them almost eclipsed 400,000 units sold in Japan, so it's a pretty popular series, and the game itself looked pretty cool, honestly. It's definitely got a very unique art style that kind of reminds me a bit of Valkyria Chronicles 4. The gameplay itself looks pretty fun. They didn't really show too much of the gameplay itself, it was more of just cutscenes, but I do like the world that it is in, and it's kind of a shame that more than likely this will not be translated and brought over to the West, because I'm sure there's people in the West that would like a game like this. I do know that it is like a popular series in Japan, but it would be cool to see something like this brought over stateside. But like I said, I'm not too familiar with Sakura Wars. What I saw looked pretty cool. Maybe it would be something I would check out. It is only confirmed for the PS4 for right now. So fans of Sakura Wars, you got your new game in the series, but don't hold your breath on it coming to the West. Now let's get into the more interesting stuff that we saw from this event. We got two new games announced for the Nintendo Switch and one game coming to the PS4 as well in this series. The first one is a Tokyo 2020 game. The Olympics is taking place in Tokyo in the year 2020, so Sega is doing a Olympic style game with realistic looking characters and realistic looking events. You might remember there was Decathlete on the Sega Saturn. That was a very popular game, and admittedly Olympic games are kind of fun. I remember renting the Olympics 96 game on the Sega Genesis all the time, and it wasn't even a good game, but I liked the variety of the events, and this game will be coming out on both the PS4 and the Nintendo Switch. They showed some gameplay mixed in with the other game that we're going to talk about that was announced for the Nintendo Switch, but I thought it looked kind of promising. It seems like there's going to be a wide variety of events that you can choose from. Obviously the Olympics today are very different than they were in the 90s. They're incorporating more and more events, even like extreme sports events, into the mix, so I'm curious to see what events will be confirmed for this, and I want to see some more gameplay of it, because these games are kind of fun. You know, there's good time wasters, and these games have always been good time wasters in my opinion. If you throw in some online competition with some online leaderboards for different events, I think it could be somewhat successful. So I'm looking forward to getting more information on Tokyo 2020. But to go alongside of that, we also had Mario and Sonic at the Tokyo Olympics 2020 confirmed for the Nintendo Switch as well. Now this has been a very long-running series that Sega and Nintendo have teamed up with, of course using both Sonic and Sega franchises and of course Mario characters in these games, and what they showed I thought looked pretty cool. It was definitely a focal point of their presentation. It was the first thing that was announced. They even brought like Mario and Sonic out on stage, and of course I don't speak Japanese, so I have no clue what they were saying, but people seemed to enjoy it, what was going on with the stage presence. But I think this game once again has a lot of promise, but I feel like both of these games can coincide side by each other. I think Nintendo Switch owners will probably want to check out both versions of the game, depending on what sort of things they like. If they like more over-the-top sort of stuff, you have the Mario and Sonic game. If you like more realistic stuff, you have the Tokyo 2020 game. Or if you like both, like me, you might end up checking out both of those games. Of course, no prices or concrete release dates were announced for these two games, but I definitely think they show a lot of promise. They also showed off some mobile stuff. There's going to be a Tokyo 2020 for iOS and Android, and a Sonic Olympic Games, no Mario, for iOS and Android as well, but I don't really care about those, so I feel like I'm not going to talk about them because you probably don't care about them. But it was pretty cool to see these two games announced, and I think both of them show a lot of promise, and they look like they could be really fun if they're done well. And then, of course, the big announcement from this event, at least in my opinion, was more information on the Sega Genesis or Sega Mega Drive Mini. Now, of course, like I said at the start of this video, during Sega Fes 2018, they unveiled the Genesis/Mega Drive Mini, and it was quickly found out that AT Games was going to be involved in the project, and a lot of people got very upset by this because AT Games' quality is questionable to say the least on some of their products. Their Genesis products have not been very good, so a lot of people were sort of taken back by that. Well, Sega ended that partnership with AT Games, thus leading to a delay of the Sega Genesis/Mega Drive Mini, but now we got a whole bunch of new information. Sega is working on it themselves, and we even have a price date, or we have a release date, a price point, and some games announced for it. So first and foremost, the system looks absolutely beautiful. Whether you're talking about the Japanese version, the European version, or the North American version. The North American version is based on the Sega Genesis 1 model, and I think it looks really clean. Of course, it's very small. It is a plug-and-play system, and like I said, we learned a release date for the system. This system will be releasing worldwide on September 19th, 2019. So this year, September 19th, you'll be able to pick up a Sega Genesis or a Mega Drive Mini, depending on where you are. The price point of it seems pretty fair in my opinion. They basically said it in yen, but doing a basic translation to the US dollar, you can get the Sega Genesis Mini with one controller for about $70 and two controllers for about $90. Now, whether or not that'll be a bit cheaper in the States without conversions, you know, maybe they'll do 60 and 80 or 60 and 75. That sort of remains to be seen. But like I said, all of the prices were in Japanese, but they did say that the worldwide release of this system would be worldwide on September 19th, 2019. They also showed off games because what's a system without games? And shockingly, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is on there. I could not believe that Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was going to be on this system. I was absolutely blown away. Like, who would have expected Sonic the Hedgehog 2? Okay, obviously that wasn't a huge announcement, but there were some interesting announcements of the games that were talked about. They only talked about 10 different games, and of course some of these are Japanese games that will probably not be on the American Genesis Mini. But what they did talk about, there was definitely some that raised my eyebrows. First off, they talked about Shining Force, which is a fantastic first-person dungeon crawling game. Of course, one of the finest strategy RPGs of all time and the start of one of the finest series of all time. They also showed off Gunstar Heroes. Now, Gunstar Heroes kind of has lost a little bit of its luster. It's been released on things like the Sega Genesis Classics Collection, but still, Gunstar Heroes is an absolutely amazing game. But the most interesting game to me was Castlevania Bloodlines. Yes, Castlevania Bloodlines is going to be on the Sega Genesis Mini. Now, admittedly, I own a cartridge of Sega Genesis, or of Castlevania Bloodlines, but I still think that's really cool because it's definitely a very underappreciated game in the Castlevania universe. It was very bloody, and it was still a really solid game. It was really fun, and I just feel like not enough people have played this game. So to see Castlevania Bloodlines on this system is really cool. It almost makes me wonder if that's going to be on the Konami Classics Collection for the Castlevania series or the Castlevania anniversary that we have coming out, because if they're putting this on the Genesis Mini, I feel like they're more open to licensing that game. So that could end up being one of the games that is available on the Konami Classics Collection for Castlevania. They also showed off some basic stuff like the controller. I think the controller looks really nice, and they said that of course it will have HDMI out to your television. But there's one question I do have about it. They showed a cartridge slot, and to me the cartridge slot was opening, so it almost feels like this will be able to take Sega Genesis cartridges, which I think would be really cool. Granted, I have so many Sega Genesis clones right now, it's absolutely insane. I just got the analog Mega SG, so I really have no no need for this system. Like, I have all these games on things like the Sega Genesis Classics Collection. I have a bunch of different emulator systems, and now I have the Mega SG system from Analog, which I will be doing a review on the channel. But I just absolutely love Sega stuff, so I'm a sucker for Sega stuff. And that was pretty much all the announcements that we saw during this event. Now, a lot of people are wondering where is stuff like the Sega Ages Collection. They actually will be talking about the Sega Ages Collection, but that won't be happening till about 3:30 a.m. my time. And honestly, I do not feel like staying up that late to see what they have announcing for that Sega Genesis for the Sega Ages Collection. So we will be covering that tomorrow on the channel because I'm definitely looking forward to that. Of course, virtual racing has been announced for the Sega Ages Collection. We'll have online racing. It is the arcade version of the game. It has 8-person local co-op mode where you can play split screen, which is just absolutely insane. But I'm definitely expecting some cool Sega Ages announcements tomorrow or later on today during Sega Fes 2019. But all in all, a solid first presentation from Sega Fes 2019. I'm a Sega kid. I love Sega stuff. I'm writing a Sega 32X book. Cheat Pop! We got some more information coming up about that book too. It's coming along nicely. But let me know in the comment section down below what you think of these announcements. Are you excited for Sakura Wars, even though you probably won't be able to play it? Are you interested in either of the Olympic games coming to the Nintendo Switch or the one coming to the PS4? And of course, what do you think of the Sega Genesis Mini? Will this be something you'll be purchasing this September? And as always, thank you guys for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Check out other videos on the channel. Like I said, we will be covering Sega Ages stuff tomorrow on the channel as well, pending they actually show some new stuff from the event. And as always, I will catch you guys on the next video. Later.